northwest Nevada, northeast Nevada, and that southern White Pine, northern Lincoln County area that may help in the analysis of this project over time, now that we have UTM's coordinates for each of these poison project areas. Broad-scale use of a poisonous substance across the landscape does pose some potential for unintended negative consequences. And contrary to some earlier reports, many species of birds and mammals are reported to be susceptible to these lethal doses of CPTH. So the environmental risks of continuing this policy may be considered by the department in the justification process for utilizing this method, what has been determined to be an only short-term benefit for ground nesting upland game birds. While lethal removal of common ravens may provide some short-term benefit to ground nesting game birds in isolated situations, reducing the anthropogenic resource subsidies, the road kills and the waste stream availability to ravens in these municipalities and private property areas was suggested by Dr. Coates as the only practical, fiscally responsible, and effective long-term solution for bringing raven numbers in balance with Great Basin ecosystems. Suitable nest and security cover in the form of healthy native understory cover of forbs and grasses provide grouse with safe, secure nesting habitat, and that's turning out to be the key in areas where ravens may be a problem. It has to do with the habitat as much as anything. Project 22. Mule deer game enhancement statewide. This is the umbrella. This is the Project 21 version of an umbrella for big game species. And in FY13, we spent a total of $36,731, bringing the total to the $636,000. And 62 carnivores were removed, including 60 coyotes and 2 cougars, for a total of 941 carnivores to date from 2010 to 2015. Well, there were some wide fluctuations in fawn and lamb ratios in Project 22 select areas. There were no significant differences detected in population trends in either mule deer and or bighorn sheep between treatment and control units over a 5-year study period. This suggests that population trends were likely affected more by other environmental factors such as disease, changing climate patterns, and our habitat sustainability and suitability. An example in, can you go to page 30? An example is in the table here before you. The bighorn data for Unit 134, where a disease event was documented and subsequently lamb production has declined dramatically, illustrates that other environmental factors can negatively affect lamb production. You can see down there where it just dropped out of the bottom on that bottom row in the lamb ratio paragraph. You do see looking up at the mule deer box, some increases in 221 and 222 and 231. but they haven't been significant. There haven't been significant increases beyond what we measured in FY09. The current deer population estimate in Area 22 is near the most recent 10-year average, and in Area 23 above that average. So based on using data to implement a targeted approach for predator management, this example of 22 and 23 suggests that predator management should be unnecessary in both these management units at the current time because they're in a growth mode. Project 25, Coyote Ecology Study. The implications for management and of this study were to improve success of game population management as a potential result of the improved understanding of coyote dietary preference, coyote productivity and prey switching capabilities, improved understanding of coyote population dynamics and resource partitioning to improve our ability to manage wildlife habitat for optimum wildlife productivity statewide. And some of the preliminary conclusions include the alternate coyote prey availability and juvenile coyote dispersal distances in central Nevada have varied dramatically over the course of the study. And if you look at page 37, for example, you can see embedded in these 3 coyote home ranges this one female that she barely moved at all, area home range of roughly 95 square kilometers, compared to some of these other animals that are in the 1,000 and almost 2,000 square kilometer averages. So there's some huge differences going on, and a lot of the data, because this PH candidate Jackson is spending so much time out in the field, he has had little time to go beyond that as far as interpretation of the data, but he has to date collared 26 adult and subadult coyotes, as well as ear tagged 22 pups, for a total of handling 48 animals, and he plans to capture again in FY14 in about a month. Page 39 is an example of beyond the modeling in these other pages. This is an example of the actual data that gets to that point where you believe 95% of the activity is going on in the home range. And then these outlying black dots are the extent to which that animal roamed. And if for those who are familiar with that country, you can sort of see that this southern monitor animal spent a lot of time in the monitors as well as in Big Smoky and the eastern edge of the Toyabees. Eventually even into Grass Valley in the Simpson Parks. Project 29, road carrying management to enhance sage-grouse populations. The implications for this that were in part that in areas where roadkill subsidies for resident raven populations are found to be a dietary factor, greater sage-grouse nest success and brood survival may be optimized by strategic removal of these subsidies. So we spent $7,773 in fiscal 13 to do just that, and we're really ramping that project up with 2 seasonals that are going to be working throughout the winter and into spring. In cooperation with the road crews as well as with other entities, we're getting, like I said, we're ramping up and getting a handle on where these carrion subsidies are and how we can quickly remove them in high priority sage-grouse habitat. These seasonals will also be responsible for, and they're going to be starting this soon as well, radio tagging ravens in these high priority sage-grouse areas and detecting their migration patterns, and if their ranges contain these giant resource subsidy areas, including carrion and also the companion project, Project 30, these waste stream, these waste management areas, and what we can do about it and how we can quickly resolve those resource subsidy issues. More than 170 road carrying specimens of at least 27 species were identified in greater sage-grouse habitats in northern Nevada. Most were buried on site. Some larger specimens were dragged off the road and made less available to scavengers. Removal and burial of carrion made them unavailable to common ravens and sage-grouse habitats. And removal of carrion from road corridors also reduced the likelihood of this secondary and tertiary road mortalities where scavenger species fell victim to the same fate. And again, the companion project, the landfill waste stream management, fiscal 13 initial year, we spent $4,752. And the implications for this study are pretty identical to the road carrying project. And while progress has been made to reduce man-made resource subsidies available to common ravens, a sustained multi-year effort and a cultural shift will be required to reduce and or eliminate these artificial resources from high priority greater sage-grouse landscapes over the long term. At this point, it's too early for both of these projects to provide preliminary conclusions on whether or not treatments are having the desired effect on greater sage-grouse populations. But again, these are going to be long-term efforts if there's going to be, if we hope to realize the benefits of these 2 projects. This is a hard-fought contract, but we're in the process of getting the Midas transfer station completely unavailable to ravens at this time. So.
Okay, any questions from the commission? Commissioner Bliss?
Pete, I got a couple questions on Project 18.
Yes.
Every month we get the trap line newsletter. And as I read through the newsletter, I think it's the September one, just read a little quote in here. Remember talking to many happy deer hunters while out in the field, and you see many reports of lots of bucks and lots of sportsman opportunity to harvest mule deer. Several hunting parties, including junior hunters with jury tags in Unit 014. In fact, in 2013, there were 48 unit tags issued for the unit. And more tags than all other hunts combined back in 2005. The Project 18 started. Another lucky mule deer tag holder observed 103 mule deer bucks in a single day, and after 6 days of hunting, seen over 400 different bucks before harvesting the last buck. And it goes on about the California sheep as well. And the next trap line, it states some similar stuff about the amount of bucks and the amount of deer that is being observed. So when I read that from the contractor that has been doing that project, and then I read your report, they're on total opposite sides. And so my question is, did anyone from the department, one of the biologists over the area, or yourself, ever meet with Wildlife Services, Mr. Miller, or anyone during the project time, and go out and observe what they were observing to document this if it's the case?
Well, our, excuse me, our biologists are on the ground on an annual basis, biannual basis, at least 2 or 3 times in the air and multiple times on the ground. And we get these same great stories from kids and adult tag holders from all over the state. And the data analysis that we did is based on this science that we get from our surveys. And we stand by that scientific analysis.
Okay. So you fly that one time a year, or it's flown spring
At
and fall?
least twice. Yeah.
Twice. Okay. One other thing is, you state in here that the surrounding areas have shown an increase in the areas in close proximity have showed an increase in fawn to doe ratios and stuff like that. In one other part, you say that there's a chance that we have more cougars and coyotes in the area now than when we started, because of the influx of predators coming from different areas and filling this void. My question is, can some of these surrounding areas be benefiting from the predator removal that's been happening in 014? Could it be broader? I mean, could that be a part of it instead of just a weather pattern? Could it be taking in more units than just 014 showing this result?
It's possible these animals are far-ranging, but some of these control units, the areas where targeted predator control is not conducted, are not necessarily adjacent to those units. But the fact that the cougars are best known for their far-ranging movements, and the fact that coyotes are best known for their ability to increase their productivity and also bring young to adulthood, that's the main thing. These populations you're going to fill in voids, and that happens all over the state. But in studies that are piled this high from all over the West, when you have an equilibrium of adult male cougars, oftentimes when you disturb that equilibrium, you can fill those voids with juvenile and subadult cougars that are in need of the territory as well, whether they're coming in from California or whether they're coming in from another unit. And oftentimes they're not as likely to be great hunters, kind of like our kids. We're taking them out.
Chad, if I might, that he brought up equilibrium, and I don't know exactly what's going on in Project AT, but there's two ecological concepts that kind of speak to your question. One is source sink dynamics. So if you have an area and you remove a bunch of animals, you create a sink. and then animals from adjacent areas might move into that. And when we look at the number of lions that have been harvested from 18, it appears that the removal activities have created a sink, because you wouldn't take 50 lions out of an area that size. You wouldn't continue to find lions in an area unless lions were readily filling in that gap. So because there appears to be a source sink dynamic, it suggests that there are animals elsewhere. The other concept Pete hit on, which is equilibrium, and those animals in those other areas are going to reach some kind of equilibrium. The predators and the prey are going to be it may be a dynamic equilibrium, it may not be a static equilibrium, it may be dynamic through time as weather conditions change and forage abundance and prey goes up and down. But it's still an equilibrium, and so the fact that we have seen so many lions removed from a small area in a relatively small amount of time suggests that we created a source, and then the fact that or a sink rather, and the fact that we have those animals coming in suggests that perhaps that equilibrium has been reached between predator and prey in those adjacent areas, and as additional animals are born and recruited in those populations and there's inadequate prey for them, they go out to look for prey elsewhere. And the thing about lions is they are known for huge home range size. We've sealed lions that have tattoos from Idaho, and several hundred miles in a short period of time is not uncommon.
Commissioner Drew?
Just to follow up on Director Wasley's points, has there been any discussion? I mean, we've had a pretty intensive long-term project in this area. Has there been any concepts or any ideas thrown around about looking at the DNA analysis? Because I think there's samples from all the lions that have been taken, and see what that sourcing dynamic has been, and see what maybe how that changes going forward without the project in place. It just seems like we kind of got a unique situation that might want.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right, and I don't know if Pete has spoke with. There's a doctoral candidate at UNR that's looked at the DNA from all the sealed lions over the past decade or so in her database, maybe even longer than that. But have you had any conversations with her about that, Pete?
Not specifically to Commissioner Drew's comment, but it's actually a really great comment, because besides her recently published literature on that very subject, on 800 lions that she worked DNA on, we have an additional bag of DNA samples from subsequent years that she had to break it off somewhere, and we've continued to take samples, so we have that data, and we can continue that into the future to look at that very question. Excellent question.
And those techniques now can actually allow researchers to determine source sink and gene flow direction, so you can tell if the genes are migrating in, that if there is a source sink dynamic, that's possible to determine.
And per my understanding, her analysis to this point has not included the lions that were taken out as part of this project.
It includes all the lines she got DNA data for, so it does include them.
And she did get DNA from the project 18.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, earlier in the day I did promise public comment on this item. Any public communication?
For the record, Paul Dixon, we didn't specifically discuss the plan in Clark County when we were there, but I had a question which came to raven control, which is, we're removing on the order of a few thousand ravens. What is the raven population in the state, and are we making any meaningful impact if you have predation on eggs? If say if you have 25 or 30,000 ravens, I mean, I don't know what the population is. I mean, are we removing 1% of the population with our control program, or 10, or 20, or 50%? I'm thinking we're removing about 1%, and I'm thinking that's why we're not seeing any impact of removing ravens. There's just a lot more ravens than we're allowed to remove by law, because they're migratory birds.
Commissioner McNish?
Maybe now's not the right time to bring it up, but I will. One of the concepts that that I think we need to talk about is that, it doesn't matter if you remove 5 ravens or 10,000. If it's not a limiting factor, it's it's not gonna have any impact on the population. I mean, that's a key component. You know, if it's not a limiting factor, you know, might edge you one way or the other, but it may not be the solution to the problem. And there's examples of that in the literature all over the place where you do this and things, you know, you remove predators and the population continues to plummet because that wasn't the original problem. And, you know, that I think with our new policy, that's the direction that we're heading, is that we're making a more concerted effort to focus our attention on that type of detail. You know, no sense spending the money on it if it's not gonna, you know, if it's not part of the problem. It's a hard thing to determine, is it? You know, but it's a necessary thing to move forward. So, you know, it's hard to establish in my mind. I struggle with, you know, let's remove 10% of the population. That should have an effect, because that may not, for other reasons.
And one other question, and when it comes to Commissioner Bliss's question about the mule deer and looking at the trap line and stuff, and that is, based on testimony from Director Wasley and others, mountain lions have a large range, and we're thinking that the Granites was a sink because we got a lot of lions out of there. When we're using these surrounding areas as control areas, and you're sucking lions out of there because you've made a vacuum in one area, are you in fact contaminating the analysis across that whole landscape because of the range of the mountain lions and their impact on all the mule deer? So if you see an increase in 104 of fawn ratios, but you may see it in the other ones because you basically lessen the density of mountain lions on a larger landscape scale because you have that sort of thing. Just a question. And I don't know if there's an answer.
Thank you. Mr. Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Gerald Left for the record. I looked at the status report, and it's pathetic propaganda, and I want to bring a few points just on two of the projects. If you look at the project 1801 unit 014, and you know, as I said in an article I wrote, this is a perfect time that we could have studied it, and the department is not studying on the DNA. But if you look at some of the excuses or reasons, if you look at page 13, where on the second paragraph down, they're comparing it with 033 to Sheldon. And then they made a comment in here on the last sentence of that paragraph. There has been a moderate increase since 2010, plus 19%, mostly in response to weather patterns compared to Sheldon. You know, how can you say this? Prove this. Compared to weather patterns, there's no proof of that. You know, we're in a drought situation. And they said, in response to weather patterns, the deer in 033 went up. We're in a drought. It just doesn't make sense. It's just a bunch of propaganda. So if you go over to another project I wanted to talk about was Project 21 on the sage grouse. Very interesting. All these projects I go through the same thing. I just picked these two out. But on this one here, if you look at the last page on the conclusion, on page 27, it said landfill dumps, roadkill, carrying and excess agricultural production is suggests to be the only practical, fiscally responsible, and effective long-term solution for bringing raven numbers in balance. And then if you go down, the next paragraph says, it appears that in these areas, grouse population was affected more by annual precipitation trends and by the quality of security cover than by any other environmental factors, including predator numbers. Well, I just have a report here, a paper, scientific paper that was written by Coates. And it says in here, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, it says depredation was the primary cause for nest failure in our study. They put camera monitors on sage grouse. It says common ravens were the most frequent sage grouse nest predators, accounting for 46.7% of nest predation. And it said that depredation was the primary cause of nest failure in our study, 82.5%. And so if you look at the conclusion of this study, and one of the department biologists, Espinosa, has a name on the paper. And if you look at the conclusion of this study, it says, efforts to curb high rates of nest depredation by predators may be desirable. So here they say in this thing here that other environmental factors, including predators, are of no value, and we got a scientific paper with one of the department employees saying 82.4% of the nest failures are due to predators. So cut all the predator projects out and you lose all of your sage grouse. They're speaking out of two sides of their mouth on that.
Who's next? Corey?
For the record, Corey Lytle, Lincoln Cab. I wanted to just point out a few general things that we noticed. We did have some phone calls at our local meeting, or before our local meeting. I had a couple of gentlemen come in and kind of raise some questions. One of the first points I want to make is similar to what Commissioner Bliss had pointed out. It seems like in a lot of these projects, there's a disconnect between what the contractor's done and what the department has as far as data. And I just want to point out that we, without going into every little line on this status report, going through every little project and every little piece of information, if those entities can get together and get those guys together and kind of get on the same page as this kind of gets finalized as we move into the next fiscal year, I think it would be really beneficial. One thing I want to point out that I've had a kind of a question raised to me is on Project 6, and it's on page 5 of the study. I was told by one of the people that's in direct contact with the person actually who did a lot of this project, that in the FY13 they actually killed 86 coyotes as opposed to 34, and 2 lions as opposed to 1. So that line item, that just kind of goes back to my point about maybe we're not on the same page here. And I realize, maybe that's not very important in the overall scheme of things. But if this is going to go on the record, and if it's going to go and be published or be read by everyone, I think we need to have the data correct. Just some other things that came to mind as I read through this. If everybody's on the same page on this and we move forward, I think it's going to be a lot better. I don't want to go into any detail. We want to get moving on this. That's just a couple of comments I have.
Next. Dr. Moore.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think I've seen any of those meetings, so glad to be up here. My favorite topic. A couple of years ago, you might remember, we were having this sort of a debate about mule deer and predators, and I got up and reminded everybody that there were 10,000 coyotes a year killed in this state. And a guy from Elko got up behind me and said, "Yeah, but they're not the right 10,000." That's a joke, but it actually happened. Ravens. I don't want Dr. Dixon to go home without knowing how many ravens there are in this state. Nobody really knows, but I have probably the best estimate, I guess. When I talked to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Sacramento a few months ago about the raven killing permits that NDOW and Wildlife Services has, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service estimates 100,000 ravens in Nevada. And because they're not willing to kill more than 5% of that number, that's why the raven killing permits do not exceed 5,000 birds in this state, because of that 5% rule that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service observes based upon their raven estimates, which they have. Having said that, 10 or 15 years ago, we were killing twice as many ravens as that in Nevada. We were killing 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 ravens a year in Nevada through the late 90s and early 2000s. I don't know what benefit that resulted in, apparently nothing. And I would remind you that 20 years ago or more now, Dr. Klebanow, who used to come to these meetings, and I miss him, has done the study that showed that, yes, you can get more nestlings out of sage-grouse nests if you kill ravens, but the nestlings don't make it to adulthood. There are no more adult birds produced. You can get more chicks, but they don't make it. And we seem to forget that bit of research. Finally, It's interesting, but with a lot, population reduction, as Mr. McNitch is wondering about, really does nothing, because it turns out ravens are specialists to some extent. There are ravens that specialize in tortoise, desert tortoise predation. There are ravens that specialize in sage-grouse nest predation. There are other ravens that don't predate. So it's not a matter of reducing population levels, it's a matter of getting the right raven, if that's what you're interested in doing. And simply killing animals because they exist, ravens, coyotes, or whatever, is not ever going to be successful.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, I'll bring it back to the commission. Any further commission comment on this item? It's just information. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In trying to wrap my hands around this report and hearing some of the public comments, and knowing that we're going to base some decisions on the continuing projects with the passing of policy 23 off of this report. There are enough questions in my mind that give me some concern as to how we're supposed to look at it and evaluate it. And I know that I have faith in the department that they do the best job that they can do to try to provide us with accurate information. And I appreciate that. I still do have a problem in certain cases with trying to, in reading some of the stuff, such as on page 13, when it shows that paragraph 3, some of the things that were measured, population increase in 014 showed highest percent increase. However, there was no statistically significant difference comparing to 014 and 013, 0111 through 113. Fawn recruitment, hunter success, total harvest, and 4 points and greater in the harvest. And there is no mention that some of those things that were measured to come up with some type of a decision on the success of the project. During that same time, quotas were increased significantly, and that was not mentioned. And that would have an effect on the hunter success, total harvest, and 4 points or greater. So I see some inconsistencies in here. There's also some language on the project, the sage-grouse project, about carnivore removal. And extreme examples of predator removal have been known to upset the balance of native ecosystems. And according to the figures that I got, over, I believe it was 6 counties, the average number of coyotes removed was 16 and 14 on the badgers per year. And over those 6 counties, I question whether 16 coyotes a year and 14 badgers a year would be enough to upset the balance of the rabbit and the mice populations. And so these are the type of things that I see that confuse me. And I think that in moving forward, I would hope to have better communications with the contractor before the report is printed, so that there's a greater chance that everybody will be on the same page when some of this stuff comes out. Because from my standpoint, I would like to truly know what the best science is in making decisions on how we move forward on this project.
Any other commission comment? Commissioner Macbeth?
We just approved policy 23. We need to give it time to catch up with the provisions of the policies that relate to the status report. The status report that we're looking at is not based on policy 23. When you look at the policy, it indicates that after June 30th and no later than August 1st, that the department is to get a report from the contractors that didn't approve. But next year it will. And those reports will, report on the things that are set forth in section 8A of the policy. So to paragraph 9, the department will then review, based on an amendment we made today, in coordination with all contractors and operators of projects. And that will eventually come to the commission. And so, that's why I haven't said anything, because I knew that this report was nothing more than a continuation of the reporting that we have been getting all along. And I admit that it's not the best, but at this point in time, I'm going to reserve any comment and give the policy a chance to be implemented. And if the reports that come out next year, my expectation would be that they will be much better than what we're seeing. And given the amount of time and effort that I know that the department has placed on the policy, it's understandable to me that the reporting is not the best. So I just want to remind everybody where we are in the process, and that hopefully we'll get to where we need to be on all aspects of the Predation.
Director Watson, do you have any comments with what Commissioner Macbeth just said about our policy and the plan we have in front of us and going forward, and how we're going to work with our cooperating agencies?
I agree. I know we just changed language in there to say in coordination with, and I've spoke multiple occasions with Mr. Jensen about that. And I think we can certainly improve on that coordination, and we'll strive to do so. While I have the floor, I did want to provide some clarification to the record regarding some accusations that were made about the department and some personnel within the department pertaining to speaking out of both sides of our mouth. Referring to the Coach study, what we heard was that depredation was the primary cause for nest failure in our study at 82.5%, and common ravens were the most frequent nest predator. Immediately following that sentence, I read, we recommend that management actions for the Virginia mountains be designed to restore habitat to increase sage-grouse nest success and decrease anthropogenic subsidies of ravens. Secondly, from the conclusion, we heard that of the 40 nests that failed in our study, 33, again 82.5%, were confirmed to have been caused by predators. The sentence that immediately follows that, efforts to curb high rates of nest predation may be desirable, but one potentially effective practice of predator management might be to restore and manage vegetation cover and reduce anthropogenic resource subsidies, i.e. roadkill and tall structures to support predators like ravens. So to suggest that one of my employees, Sean Espinoza, is being disingenuous and that the department is speaking out of both sides of their mouth is inaccurate. I just want to let the record reflect that.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have any comment? Before we move off this item, does any public have any comment? Because this is a fairly charged item, I See, there's some people in the room that I expected to talk, and they've been silent, so I'm giving them one more chance. Come on up.
Walt Gardner for the record, not to contradict habitat, but it just makes me wonder, they keep saying, yeah, it's predators, but we need to improve the habitat. Does improving habitat not make predators hungry? Just a simple question.
I've had the benefit of sitting through well too many sage-grouse meetings and looking at Dr. Coates' information of nest success, the cameras that were spoke about earlier in the nest, and nest survival, predation by ravens. And habitat does change things a ton. What Coach talked about every time I've heard him speak, and he's probably the foremost expert on it, is if you have sufficient cover, the birds, when they're walking back to their nest, the ravens can't see them. But if your cover's too low, the ravens do not target the nest per se. They can't see the eggs. What I understand from Coach, and there's other people who sit sage-grouse meetings with me, the ravens target the hens. And they watch that hen, they'll fly around and they see a hen walking back to the nest. And the second that hen nests, there's video footage of the hen getting kicked off the nest and the raven getting the egg. That's where they're successful. If you don't have enough cover to give that hen cover to get back to her nest, that's when the ravens are extremely successful. When you get that cover back, the raven success on that nest goes down. That's my understanding. I don't know if Commissioner Drew, who sits on the sage-grouse, or Director Wazley has anything going on with that, or Mark Jensen, but that's my understanding of habitat and how it plays an influencing role in predation. Mark, do you have anything to add?
Mark Jensen, State Director for Wildlife Services. Again, like Commissioner McBeth, I'm just kind of reserving my comments on this. We weren't allowed any time to comment on this report at all. We didn't provide any input to this. We've found a lot of inaccuracies in this as well. We're hoping, I've talked to Director Wazley, we're hoping that we can work better together in the future on both the plan and the reports, and that we hope that this gets better. But I think it's important to say that we did not provide any comment, didn't have the opportunity to comment on this before it was made public. And that's disappointing, but I guess that's where we're at, and we'll hope to move forward in the future.
While you're up there, Mr. Jensen, I have a question for you. You've seen the new Pulse 23. There is some reporting requirements of your agency to get back to us. Are those sufficient in your mind, and will that help so we don't end up in this situation again, the situation everybody says we're in with lack of communication? I believe reports coming out of your department in a timely manner to get back to our department and more coordination between the two will give us a better product going forward. Do you also see that as being a possibility?
For the record, Mark Jensen, I hope that it is better, but again, I guess we are a cooperating agency, but we really have no voice in this. Maybe the policy will help with that, but again, as a cooperating agency, I sit in the audience just like everybody else to see if there's a chance to comment on this stuff. But again, we provide the information, all of the information that's requested of us to the department, all the tank information, all the billing information, all that information goes into the department. And what makes it from the department to the commission, that's completely up to the department. We really have no voice. And maybe the policy will change that, but we're doing the best we can to try to help. That's one of the points that I continue to make, is we're here to try to help with these issues. It's been very difficult, and continues to be so. We hope it'll get better.
I'm hoping the mechanisms put in place today with the new policy enable all of us to share information and get the most accurate information in this type of report on both sides.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come on up, Mr. Smith.
Kathy Smith, Arena, Nevada. I don't, it's hard to say what has a role, but when there's inconsistencies in reporting, I do think one thing I haven't heard mentioned is there's a conflict of interest in a contractor, and you don't know what's going on there, but there is some benefit for him to have this project working. So there's a financial benefit there too. And I don't know if it's a factor, if it's not a factor, but I think it's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Everything needs to be looked at cautiously when we make certain decisions based upon somebody who has a conflict of interest.
Anybody else? Seeing none, let's take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back.